The holidays mean more travel, more shopping, more time online, and more personal info in more places that could expose you more to identity theft. But LifeLock monitors millions of data points per second. If your identity is stolen, our US-based restoration specialists will fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Don't face drained accounts, fraudulent loans, or financial losses alone. Get more holiday fun and less holiday worry with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit lifelock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Welcome back, folks, and Merry Christmas to everybody. We hope it finds y'all in a peaceful state of mind. And thanks for spending some time with us whenever you're listening, whether it's Christmas Day or over the weekend or catching up the following week. Today is Thursday, December 25th, 2025. Born on this date in 1945, University of Alabama and NFL quarterback Ken Stabler of Foley. And in 1946, the granddaddy of Gulf and Western music, or whatever you want to call it, Jimmy Buffett of Mobile. Now, those are not the only birthdays that are observed today. Obviously, there's another big one in our culture, and we're going to expand on that in just a bit when we talk some Christmas history with AL.com's Greg Garrison. First, we do have a couple of news items I wanted to get in. One's an update on the SS United States, the big ship that's docked in Mobile. The other is on a rabbi at a historic synagogue planning to leave the state. My name's Ike Morgan, and we're down in Alabama. Since we have a bit of an abbreviated report today, we're going to go straight in so that we're not inundating everyone with ads right at the top. There's an Alabama research benefit to the planned sinking of the SS United States, reports AL.com's John Sharp. Now, the big ocean liner is still docked in Mobile, being prepped to become the world's largest artificial reef early next year. Now, there are still local officials in New York City wanting to get their mitts on the big boat and turn it into an above-water museum. But Okaloosa County, Florida owns the ship and wants to sink it offshore to develop a marine habitat and diving destination off the Gulf Coast. Researchers at the Dauphin Island Sea Lab are already doing soundscape research at the boat's selected resting site. Now, the reason they're already collecting data is to have a before collection of sounds. They hope to continue to collect that data for at least a year after the SS United States hits the Gulf floor. That way, they'll know some of the differences the artificial reef makes at that location. They'll be able to hear human and animal sounds, wind and waves in the area. They say they'll be able to then analyze how sound travels through the habitat, what kind of sea life shows up, and even human activity in the area. The SS United States has been docked in Mobile since March. During its time there, it's proved to be a tourist attraction as boat rides have offered excursions to the ship for an up-close perspective from the water. Another similar opportunity is coming, by the way. An even bigger ship, the aircraft carrier USS Enterprise, is expected to possibly spend years in Mobile. The Enterprise was the world's first nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. One of the state's most well-known Jewish leaders is heading to the Chicago area, reports AL.com's Greg Garrison. Adam Wright has been a rabbi at Temple Emmanuel in Birmingham since 2019. He's been calling for unity among Jewish movements since the Hamas terror attacks on Israel. Explained Wright, quote, "When Hamas came in, they didn't care if someone was Reform, conservative, or Orthodox." Now, he's also called this a pivotal time for Jews. The move takes Wright and his wife back to the area they grew up in and allows him to work toward his goals on a national scale in an area with many more Jews. His wife, Dr. Rachel Wright, is an internist and pediatrician. Hey, now we're going to take that quick break. We'll be right back to talk a little Christmas. Y'all stay with us.
Right now, when you walk into a Burlington, you're walking into deals on top of deals during our Oh Wow Winter Clearance event. That's main character energy. Wow. Find tons of markdowns up to 70% off other retailers' prices on clearance items. Because at Burlington, the deals aren't the only thing turning heads. Save at our Oh Wow Winter Clearance event now. Seriously, with these savings, why shop anywhere else?
Burlington Deals Brands Wow.
Styles and selection vary by location.
This is a real good story about Bronx and his dad, Ryan, real United Airlines customers.
We were returning home, and one of the flight attendants asked Bronx if he wanted to see the flight deck and meet Captain Andrew.
I got to sit in the driver's seat.
I grew up in an aviation family, and seeing Bronx kind of reminded me of myself when I was that age.
That's Andrew, a real United pilot.
These small interactions can shape a kid's future.
It felt like I was the captain.
Allowing my son to see the flight deck will stick with us forever.
That's how good leads the way.
Hey, we're back with Greg Garrison. He's been on Down in Alabama before, and we frequently share his reporting. He covers a wide array of news and features and culture topics, and is at the top of the mountain among those who've covered the religion beat. We're going to talk a little Christmas on Christmas Day. Thanks for taking the time to join us, Greg.
Yeah, Merry Christmas, Ike.
Merry Christmas to you. I hope it's not too hectic. It tends to get that way.
No, it's peaceful. It's a silent night here in Alabama.
That's the way we like it. Greg, Christmas obviously hasn't always been the holiday that it is today. Here in America, and in the South in particular, when did it really take off?
Well, to start with, I always start with the word Christmas, which is really two words, Christ Mass. It's traditionally a Catholic Mass on a feast day. And of course, in merry old England, a couple centuries ago, there were interesting traditions built up around Christmas involving 12 days of Christmas. It would start on December 25th and go all the way through Epiphany on January 6th, so that January 5th was known as Twelfth Night, like in the William Shakespeare play. And Twelfth Night was the time when you took down your Christmas decorations, which were typically evergreen, wreaths, and so forth. And at the time, they believed that spirits lived in these decorations, and you had to ritually burn them at the end. So Twelfth Night was a time when they did big bonfires in Old England, Victorian England. So, we do it a little bit differently now. People now start celebrating Christmas as early as Thanksgiving week, and they want to be done with it by Christmas Day. They're like, I've had enough, because of the commercialization.
Yeah.
But the history of Christmas in America is interesting, because at first the Puritans wanted nothing to do with Christmas. Christmas was illegal in New England in the early colonial times. And it was really only with the immigration of Germans who brought their Christmas trees and a lot of the German Catholic traditions that it started to catch on in America. And of course, what really put it over the top was Coca-Cola advertising post-World War II, when you had this jolly Santa that the cartoonist hired by Coca-Cola created. And it's basically the image of Santa Claus we use today. And it's based on St. Nicholas. And St. Nicholas Day is December 6th. So in Orthodox churches in the Eastern world, like Turkey and Greece and so forth, St. Nicholas Day is a feast day celebrating a real person, St. Nicholas of Myra, who was a bishop in the 4th century. So there's a little bit about St. Nicholas that makes its way all the way up into the Santa Claus myths of the 1900s. But it's it's a real saint, that Saint Nicholas, who's the basis in some ways for Santa Claus.
My first takeaway from all that is that I'm never going to look at our evergreen wreaths quite the same. And
yeah, yeah, they believe that if you didn't do this ritual bonfire and burn so that the spirits could be released from the evergreens, that it would be a bad agricultural year the next year. It was important for the crops.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah.
What about when Christmas was illegal in some places in the colonies? What were
Right.
some of the Puritans? What was their line of thinking there?
Their line of thinking was that was Catholic blasphemy, and that the celebration of Christ is only appropriate to celebrate his resurrection, which the Protestants celebrate every Sunday. So every Sunday is a celebration of the resurrection of Christ, and all this stuff about even thinking the birthday of Jesus was considered blasphemous. And of course, the birthday of Jesus, December 25th, derives from pagan traditions in which the winter solstice was celebrated in pagan cultures. And then Catholic countries, Ireland and various other places where they came in and overtook pagan celebrations, they built on the old pagan celebration and said, we'll just put the birth of Christ here on Day of the Sun, when the winter solstice means the sun is starting to come out a little bit longer every day. Now you've had the shortest day of the year, the December 21st, and now the sun is starting to come back. So the pagans celebrated this as really a worship of the sun, and Christians made it worship of the Son of God.
Okay, so is the move to December 25th? You talked about we're already at the end of the season. Is that was that kind of an American thing when it got so big here?
Yeah, I mean, traditionally, the big celebration from the early church on into Western Europe in the Middle Ages, the big celebration was Epiphany on January 6th. So December 25th gradually took on more and more importance. And then, of course, like I said, in modern culture, because it's based on commercialism, and Coca-Cola kind of started it with this big push with Santa Claus and commercializing him. And then it became more about, this all this buying that starts taking place the day after Thanksgiving.
Right.
So everybody has to start celebrating Christmas early so they can get all their shopping done to give these gifts on December 25th. And like I said, the idea of celebrating 12 days of Christmas kind of fell away early on in America because it's just too much. By the end of Christmas Day, people are ready to move on and go ahead and take the trees down and stuff. But it's okay if you leave your trees and your holly up until December 5th and have a big bonfire on the eve of Epiphany.
Yeah. And yeah, because I remember my grandmother would refer to Old Christmas because it was also her birthday. And
right.
So I guess somewhere, and she was not from a big metro area, shall we say. So it somehow made its way through Appalachia and into folks' lives. What is there anything peculiar to the South and our region with how the holiday grew as it moved over here?
Yeah, I think that Alabama was the first state to make Christmas a legal holiday.
Yeah.
We've had stories about that in the past. So it became popular here pretty quick, early on in the history of the state. And, the rural aspect of it, I know I grew up in southern Missouri in the Ozarks, but the same kind of feel for Christmas was in rural North Alabama, I think, too. And that we would go out the week of Christmas, like within a week before Christmas, and go out and chop down a cedar tree on our farm, and then drag it in the house and throw that aluminum tinsel on it, and maybe a string of lights with the giant bulbs that they used to have.
That's right.
But sometimes we put up our tree and decorated it as late as Christmas Eve. And it was a tradition in my family to go to midnight mass, where you would actually try to stay awake. As a kid, it's pretty hard. But you would go to church at midnight, and there would be midnight mass, the Christ Mass,
right
at the stroke of midnight, and with lit candles to bring in the day.
That would have been tough for me to pull off, because I was probably up about 4:30 on Christmas morning.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. I mean, you're a kid and you want to get up early and get your presents in the morning, but the grandparents want you to go to midnight mass. And really, so it's only a thing. You had to get old enough to be able to stay awake till midnight. And then you're struggling to stay awake from midnight to 1 o'clock for the midnight mass.
I know that there were revivals through the Midwest and the South in the late 1800s. Did that affect Christmas at all, or was it kind of already a done deal by then that it was going to be a secular and a religious holiday?
Yeah, I think it's always been a secular and a religious holiday, kind of like it was always a pagan and a religious holiday, with the Catholics imposing Christ Mass on the pagan celebration of the birth of the Son. So it's always been this tension. It's not really a recent thing where people talk about the war on Christmas. That's always been a tension that existed, of secular observance versus religious observance.
Yeah.
Now, and as far as revival in early Alabama, the Methodists were a little bit more accepting of some of the Catholic things, because the Methodists came out of the Anglican tradition, which came out of the Catholic tradition. So they were a little more, you will see in Methodist churches today, more of the Advent candles and traditional, almost Catholic-looking Christmas celebration, whereas Baptists have tended to be more of the bare minimum, and really have only been dragged kind of kicking and screaming into Christmas religious celebration. In fact, when Christmas falls on a Sunday, many Baptist churches won't even have a church service that day. It's like, we're just going to let people stay home and open their presents. Some of them do. Some of the evangelical churches, Christmas services are very popular, but usually not on Christmas Day. They'll, like, for example, Church of the Highlands, they'll have a whole series of services leading up to Christmas. But Christmas Day, they've had a tendency to say, that's family time. Y'all go home and do your presents and celebrate Christmas in the home.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
lots of food.
That's fascinating what you just said. I've never made the connection with the Methodist Church and Advent acknowledgement and that sort of thing. I've noticed that. I didn't realize that was the connection to the Catholic Church.
Yeah, the Methodist Church has always been a little more liturgical. It's kind of a midway point between Southern Baptists and Roman Catholics. So they've always been a little more accepting of liturgical tradition, such as Advent, observing Advent for 4 weeks leading up to Christmas with Advent candles and so forth. You'll see that in a lot of Methodist churches.
Okay. The German traditions you mentioned, that was probably the big influence coming to America. You talked about. Did Santa Claus come in on that wave?
Well, yeah, they did have Saint Nicholas, and Santa Claus is just an abbreviation of Saint Nicholas. Santa for Saint, and then Claus for Nicholas. So Saint Nicholas was definitely part of the December tradition of Christmas, because you would very often start celebrating with Saint Nicholas Day on December 6th. and then go all the way to Christmas, and sometimes, like I say, 12 days of Christmas all the way to Epiphany. So it was definitely part of their liturgical rhythm to include St. Nicholas in that.
Mm-hmm.
And then, the commercialization seized upon it. It was really an Episcopal priest who wrote "'Twas the Night Before Christmas." He was responsible for a lot of the modern Santa Claus mythology and kind of bridging between St. Nicholas and Santa Claus. That was Clement Moore. He was an Episcopal seminarian.
For some reason, that's surprising to me that a priest would have written about Santa Claus back in the 1820s or 30s or whenever that was.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think he did it as a story for his children, and everybody loved it. 'Twas the night before Christmas.
People were people even way back then. I just see everyone in, starch collar, kind of serious faces like they are in the paintings.
Yeah, but it was jolly old Saint Nick, and then Sunbloom, the famous cartoonist that Coca-Cola hired, made it jolly old Saint Nicholas Santa Claus, and that became the Macy's Santa Claus symbol that everybody became familiar with, and was built on by all of those claymation specials we grew up with in the 60s, and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and everything. It was all built on that image.
Yeah, during our annual viewing of Rudolph, that's what we were talking about. When they made this, and whenever it was, 67, 65,
yeah,
they had no idea that in 2025 we would be sitting there watching it.
No, and the funny thing, they did these on these claymation budgets. It was Rankin Bass, had the claymation where they moved the reindeer a little bit for every frame to create this, and then had the abominable snowman and the little bulb for Rudolph. It's just hilarious to think of now, and yet it's beloved and revered the way they did this.
Oh yeah, the real low budget look of it is really adds to it. You get that feeling of nostalgia just because of what it is. I think the later stuff they did when they started doing a little more animation and stuff looks way worse to me. It's almost like when they did Rudolph, that was it.
Yeah, that was like the peak. It's like, just give me that. I love that claymation. And the writing on those things is hilarious too. It's like, I don't want to make toys. I want to be a dentist. I mean, that's perfect. And then he ends up fixing the tooth for the abominable snowman. I mean, it's just too good. You really can't let the season pass without watching that.
No, I can't believe that I didn't notice as a kid how awful they all were. I mean, even Santa Claus. I mean, they would all be canceled today if they treated Rudolph like that.
Oh yeah. I mean, those were some rough reindeer games. They were mean.
Well, I don't want to keep you forever, but are any big things we're leaving out here that we want to talk about?
No, just I hope everybody enjoys Christmas. And, one thing I've written about in the past that a lot of theologians point out is that the gift-giving tradition of Christmas really is central, because it starts with the gift from God to the people, whereas Jesus is the gift of salvation to the people. And it picks up with the story in Bethlehem where the wise men come to Bethlehem with the gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Those were the first Christmas gifts. Mm-hmm. So the gift of God to the people of the birth of Jesus, and then the bringing of the gifts to honor the newborn king. Mm-hmm. So that gift giving is a central part of Christmas. So it's not wrong to enjoy giving your loved ones gifts and receiving gifts. That's all part of it. But I think, you have to keep in mind that spirit of where the gift giving comes from.
Yeah, absolutely. That's right. And as I get older, I that part feels warmer than the other. I know everybody's doing their own thing, but I agree. I love Christmas more than I ever did today, honestly.
Yes, me too.
One question I will make that I had, and I forgot, I meant to ask you a while ago. Um, we know that church attendance has dwindled while the Christmas celebration has grown, and I think you already addressed this probably well enough. But I wanted to ask your opinion on this. Do you think that's strictly a case of it becoming more of a secular holiday, or do you think people who are believers are just different today and not as reachable by churches? You know what I'm talking about? That
Yeah,
people still believe in God, but they don't go to church anymore.
yeah. I mean, there's several aspects to that in that people are less religious and less spiritual than they were in the past. Surveys have shown that. But the people who are religious and do want to celebrate Christmas as a religious holiday, really it's quite a vital movement. And I would point to something like the Church of the Highlands instituting its, you know, 20 services or so leading up to Christmas. They get more than 50,000 people. They have waiting lists that sign up for those. You have to reserve a spot. So, you know, a mega church like that, that's evangelical, kind of in the Pentecostal tradition, they're celebrating Christmas with that much verve and enthusiasm. And then, of course, you know, the traditional denominations, the mainline denominations, the Catholic Church, they still celebrate it. If you go to midnight mass at St. Paul's Cathedral, last night it would have been, if this is on Christmas Day, but we might have missed it, but it would be packed on Christmas Eve at midnight mass at St. Paul's Cathedral. I've been there. You can barely get in. You can wedge yourself into a pew in the back, you know. So it is still fervently celebrated by religious people who want to keep the religious celebration of Christmas.
Well, thanks so much, Greg. I really
Absolutely.
enjoyed having you back on the show again, and I know that the audience did. Merry Christmas to you, everybody out there. Thank you so much for listening to us. I want you to have a great Christmas and New Year, but don't wait till the New Year to come back and see us. And as always, check us out anytime you can on the World Wide Web at al.com.